What if I told you the most wanted man in the world, Osama bin Laden, was once trapped, pinned down in a mountain fortress, surrounded by American firepower, and just when capture seemed inevitable, he vanished? This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is history. The Battle of Tora Bora, December 2001. A story of betrayal, arrogance, and missed chances. A story the Pentagon doesn't like to talk about. Because the truth is, America had him. And then they lost him. Before we unravel this dark chapter, make sure you subscribe to The Time Lens, where we uncover the forgotten stories that shaped history. It was only weeks after 9/11. The world was still in shock. America was burning with rage. And President George W. Bush had one mission above all: bring Osama bin Laden to justice. By early December, U.S. intelligence tracked him to a remote cave complex near the Pakistan border, Tora Bora, a labyrinth of tunnels carved deep into white, jagged mountains. Locals called it the Black Cave. To bin Laden, it was a fortress built to be impenetrable. CIA operatives, Delta Force soldiers, and special forces knew this was it. They had bin Laden cornered. Reports even claimed they intercepted his radio calls, where he urged his men to fight to the death. But there was a problem. A fatal decision was made at the highest levels of the Pentagon. Instead of sending in thousands of U.S. troops to seal off the mountains, they relied on Afghan warlords, local militias who were paid with suitcases of American cash. The assumption was simple. Afghans knew the terrain better. They would do the dirty work, while U.S. bombers pounded the caves from above. For days, American aircraft unleashed hell. B-52 bombers dropped wave after wave of 15,000-pound bombs. The mountains shook. The sky lit up with fire. CIA officers believed no one could survive inside. But bin Laden and his fighters were not ordinary men. They had carved deep tunnels into the rock, stockpiled supplies, and prepared for a siege. The more bombs fell, the deeper they burrowed. On the ground, Afghan militias, supposedly loyal to America, were advancing slowly, suspiciously slowly. Some fired warning shots instead of killing. Others deliberately left mountain passes open. Whispers began to spread. Were they fighting the Taliban or protecting them? And all the while, U.S. commanders in Washington ignored urgent pleas from the CIA on the ground. Send more troops, block the escape routes, don't rely on warlords. By December 12th, intelligence confirmed it. Bin Laden was inside the caves. He was wounded, exhausted, and reportedly prepared to die. U.S. bombers rained down hundreds of thousands of pounds of explosives in a desperate attempt to finish him. But the net was never closed. The Afghan warlords deliberately slowed their advance, and Pakistan's tribal border, a rugged, unguarded stretch of wilderness, remained open. Bin Laden's men knew the land like ghosts. At night, under the cover of snow and chaos, they began slipping through secret mountain trails toward Pakistan. CIA officers on the ground sent desperate messages back to Washington. We need U.S. Rangers to block the passes now. If not, he will get away. The reply from the Pentagon was chilling. We do not have the forces to commit. Whether it was arrogance or hesitation, the decision sealed the outcome. By December 16th, bin Laden's voice was heard on radio one last time. He urged his men to scatter and survive. Then, silence. When U.S. and Afghan fighters finally entered the caves, they found abandoned weapons, burned-out hideouts, and scraps of clothing. But the most wanted man in the world was gone. Vanished. The CIA knew what had happened. Bin Laden had walked out of Tora Bora alive, escorted by loyal fighters, protected by the same warlords America had paid, and slipping into the lawless tribal lands of Pakistan. The war that could have ended in weeks was about to stretch into decades. The U.S. had relied heavily on Afghan warlords like Hazrat Ali and Haji Zaman. These men weren't loyal to America. They weren't loyal to Afghanistan either. They were loyal only to themselves, and to whoever paid more. The CIA funneled them millions of dollars in cash to hunt bin Laden. But reports later revealed that many of these so-called allies may have quietly let al-Qaeda fighters escape. Some even tipped them off about U.S. plans. Why? Because for them, bin Laden wasn't just an enemy. He was also a source of influence, leverage, and fear. Capturing him might have brought short-term rewards, but letting him go preserved their long-term power. On the ground, CIA officers like Gary Burnson were screaming for reinforcements. They wanted U.S. Army Rangers or Marines to surround the mountain passes. But in Washington, Pentagon leaders, including Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld, refused. Their logic was brutal. They didn't want to commit thousands of troops into dangerous mountain warfare so early in the campaign. They believed Afghan militias would do the job. In reality, this was a catastrophic miscalculation. By not sealing the escape routes, they left the back door wide open. Bin Laden and his men simply walked through it. Later, CIA officials accused the Pentagon of arrogance. Pentagon officials blamed the CIA for exaggerating intelligence. The truth, both sides failed. And the man responsible for 9/11 walked free. Evidence suggests bin Laden crossed into Pakistan's tribal areas with the help of loyal fighters. The Pakistani border was unguarded, and some elements within Pakistan's intelligence service, the ISI, had long-standing ties with the Taliban. Some historians argue that Pakistani contacts may have secretly sheltered bin Laden in those early days. After all, less than a decade later, he was discovered not in a cave, but living in a compound in Abbottabad, right under the nose of Pakistan's military. This raises the uncomfortable question: was bin Laden protected not just by warlords, but also by powerful players in Pakistan who saw him as too valuable to hand over? The escape at Tora Bora was not just a missed opportunity, it reshaped the entire war. Had bin Laden been killed or captured in 2001, the US might have declared victory and left Afghanistan within months. Instead, his survival kept the war on terror alive. He became a ghost, inspiring militants from Iraq to Yemen. For the US, the failure meant 2 decades of war, over 2,400 American soldiers killed, and trillions of dollars spent. For Afghans, it meant endless bombings, drone strikes, and a nation ripped apart. All because in those cold December nights of 2001, the net wasn't closed. Years later, US commanders admitted the truth. They should have sent more troops. They should never have trusted warlords, and they should have sealed the border. Gary Burnson, the CIA officer at Tora Bora, put it bluntly: we had him. He was within reach, and we let him slip away. The Battle of Tora Bora is remembered as a ghost story of modern warfare, a moment when the greatest superpower on Earth had its greatest enemy cornered, and then lost him to shadows. So ask yourself, was this just incompetence, or was it betrayal? Did America's own allies sell out the mission for money? And what if, just what if, bin Laden had been killed in 2001? Would Afghanistan's history, and perhaps the world's, look completely different today? This is the story of the war's greatest escape, and the scar it left still haunts America. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to the Time Lens, because the past is full of secrets, and we're here to reveal the ones they don't want you to remember.